The crystal dome floated above the Zephyrian homeworld, gleaming like a jewel against the black canvas of space. Its surface shimmered with the light of three suns, each ray refracted into rainbows across the structure's translucent walls. Inside, the greatest war council of the galaxy gathered, secure in their power and united by arrogance. The table was a mountain of black metal, smooth as glass and wide enough to host an entire parade. Upon its surface, light drones projected star systems in shifting patterns. Glowing dots marked human colonies, scattered like red stains across the map. The sight made alien generals buzz, hiss, and click with contempt. General Vexithera towered over them all, 12 feet tall, her armored, insected body catching the light like a living blade. Her compound eyes shimmered with shifting colors, her mandibles opening in a rasping laugh. She raised one serrated forearm toward the stars. "Look at this infestation," she buzzed, her voice echoing through the chamber. "In 2 decades, the humans have spread across 47 worlds. They breed like vermin, building crude cities where they do not belong." Admiral Krexnoth slithered around the far side of the table, his immense serpentine body coiling like living armor. His scales rippled red in fury. "My spies confirm they have 50 warships now, pathetic constructions of welded metal. They should not even fly." The council hissed with amusement. They had conquered 17 star systems by force, crushing opposition under waves of fire and steel. To them, war was simple: more ships, bigger guns, thicker shields. It had always been enough. Vexithera's mandibles clacked. "They think their 50 toys can stand against our armada of 300. Our smallest gun can turn a moon into dust. They dare to posture against us." The chamber filled with alien laughter, clicking, hissing, rattling, grinding. A choir of predators mocking a prey that had not yet realized it was already in the jaws of the beast. But then the air shimmered. The massive wall screen lit up with the image of a human. She was small by their standards, barely taller than a child among them. A woman in a simple blue uniform, black hair cut short, dark eyes sharp and steady. Commander Sarah Chen. She bowed her head slightly, her voice calm but carrying across the chamber like steel wrapped in silk. "Honored generals," she began, "I come to speak on behalf of humanity. Perhaps there is still time for peace." The laughter resumed at once, but sharper, crueler. Admiral Krexnoth's scales burned crimson. "Peace! You have stolen territory. You have dared to grow where you were not invited. There will be no peace, only surrender." Chen's eyes did not waver. "If you choose war, we will defend ourselves, but you would do well not to underestimate us." General Vexithera leaned forward, her voice buzzing with mockery. "Defend yourselves? With what? Scrap metal hulls, engines that choke on combustion fumes, projectiles instead of beams. Your tactics are a child's game." Chen's shoulders straightened. Her voice stayed calm, even as the War Council's mockery swelled. "We may not have your technology, but we have our strengths. We will use guerrilla warfare, asymmetric tactics. We will strike from shadows and fade before you can respond." The chamber howled with laughter. Krexnoth's voice slithered above the rest. "Hide, little ape, our sensors can detect a single atom drifting 10 light years away. There is nowhere you can hide. We will scour you from the stars." Sarah Chen's image flickered as the transmission waned, but her final words carried across the chamber with quiet power. "You underestimate us at your own risk. We are not like the others you've conquered. Remember this conversation when the time comes." The screen went dark. Silence fell for a moment, just a moment. Then Vexithera clacked her mandibles in glee. "She thinks tricks and shadows can stop us. She does not understand. The Armada is unstoppable." Fleet Commander Zardo, his crystalline body glowing faintly, raised a shard-like limb. "Their ships are fragile, their engines primitive, their computers laughable. When we strike, their defenses will crumble." General Morton, a bear-like creature of armored bulk, rumbled in amusement. "They may as well throw rocks. 1 week from now, humanity will be nothing but ash." The War Council agreed. Plans were made, formations drawn, orders given, 300 warships prepared to jump. And yet, as Vexithera dismissed the human's warning with a hiss, a sliver of unease lingered. Commander Chen had not spoken like prey. She had spoken like someone with a secret. But no one believed it mattered. Because the Armada was invincible. Because the humans were weak. Because war, they thought, was already won. Far away in the dark between stars, the human ship UES Defiance drifted in silence. crude by alien standards, a patchwork of welded metal and humming pipes, but alive with human resolve. Inside, Commander Sarah Chen sat among her officers, her face lit by the glow of tactical screens. 50 captains stared back at her through quantum-entangled links, their ships scattered across the void. She spoke softly, but every word was heard. They planned a strike in 72 hours, 300 warships against our 50. They believe the outcome is certain. Silence hung, a grim silence, then she continued. They laughed when I told them about guerrilla tactics. They believe their sensors make them gods. They believe they cannot lose. And that, she said, her eyes hard as stone, is why we can win. The captains leaned closer, hearts heavy but burning. Sarah Chen gestured to a new figure on the screen, a woman with wild gray hair, eyes burning with feverish intellect. Dr. Blackwood, Chen said, tell them about Project Mirage. The scientist nodded. Captains, what I am about to reveal is classified at the highest level. It is our secret weapon, and it will decide this war. The screen flickered again, revealing an object no larger than a grain of rice, but shimmering with impossible light. A mine, a weapon, a miracle. Dr. Blackwood's voice was steady. This, captains, is how the great Armada will vanish. The bridge of the Eternal Dominion was silent, as if the entire crew had forgotten how to breathe. Admiral Krexnoth's coils tightened around the command throne, scales flashing a pale yellow, a color his species rarely showed in public. Fear. Reacquire, he thundered again, though he already knew the truth. No ship simply vanishes. Sensor Adept Erie pressed her tongue to the data slit, optical organs fluttering as she pulled readings from 20 layers of spectra. Admiral, stellar fury is gone. No wreckage, no radiation spike. It didn't explode, it didn't jump. Her scales shimmered gray. It ceased to exist. Another officer interrupted, voice strangled. Admiral Cruiser Void Hunter has vanished, destroyer Swift Death as well. Before Krexnoth could respond, a chorus of shouts filled the chamber. Tactical glyphs flickered and died. Across the formation, an entire squadron of 12 ships blinked out in the span of 30 seconds. The Armada, once a black tide blotting the stars, now looked incomplete. Holes yawned in its perfect geometry. Krexnoth's scales bled red with rage. Find the human fleet. They are here somewhere, striking from shadow. Erie's voice shook. Admiral, no human emissions detected. No weapons, no energy discharge, nothing. Nothing does not kill ships, General Vexathara screeched from her own flagship. Her mandibles clattered in a sound that would have terrified lesser species. We are the great Armada. We do not lose ships to nothing. But another report arrived. 3 more vessels gone. Then 5. Then one of the massive battle platforms, Iron Talon, winked out while its crew was in the middle of their evening meal. The laughter of the War Council was gone, replaced now with the quiet sound of fear, hisses, clicks, voices grown tight. On the UES Defiance, Commander Sarah Chen stood in silence, watching the tactical display bloom with blue markers. Each marker represented a ship lost to the mines. She did not smile, she did not cheer. Her officers whispered in disbelief, but Chen only lowered her head for a heartbeat, a gesture of mourning. Thousands of lives gone. Yes, they were the enemy. Yes, they had come to enslave or kill her people, but lives were still lives. Lieutenant Torres turned to her. Ma'am, confirmation across multiple sectors. Our fields are working. The Armada, they don't even know what's happening to them. Dr. Blackwood's voice cut in through the channel, clipped and tight. Not what, Lieutenant? Where? They're not dead. They're displaced. Displaced where? Torres asked. Blackwood paused, then said the truth like a blade. We don't know. Somewhere outside our space-time. To us, they're gone. To them, it could be seconds or centuries. They may never return. Chen closed her eyes briefly, then straightened. Record that in the log. If this war ends, history must remember what we've done. Elsewhere in the system, one of the volunteer ships was dying. The UES Valiant bucked under enemy fire, its hull peeled like paper. Plasma scoured decks into ash. Captain Thompson clung to his chair, voice ragged. Keep broadcasting, don't you stop until I say. A missile rack ruptured, shattering 3 compartments. Thompson's crew screamed into the comm, reporting casualties, begging for orders. He ignored the panic and stared at the tactical screen where alien ships swarmed. Commander Chen, he whispered over the fleet channel. Tell my wife, his words cut off in static as a final plasma lance carved the ship in half. The Valiant was gone. Chen heard the silence. She said nothing, only straightened her shoulders. On the alien flagship, Admiral Krexnoth's rage gave way to something deeper, doubt. He had fought for 3 centuries. He had never lost. His people measured time by his victories, and now his perfect armada was bleeding away into nothingness. General Vexathara's voice returned, mandibles clattering with anger and fear. This is human trickery, some hidden weapon. You mocked their guerrilla threats, Admiral, but perhaps we have underestimated. Enough, Krexnoth roared. His scales flared crimson. I will not allow fear to poison this fleet. We are the great Armada. We do not fall to apes. But even as he spoke, another battleship winked out, and another. The fear was spreading. Krexnoth saw it in his officers' eyes. Warriors shifted uneasily at their posts. Crews whispered prayers. Every flicker of a light, every odd sensor return made them jump. Nico Holt crouched in the Wayfarer's engineering bay, sweat running down his temple. The boards in front of him flickered with more activation alerts. They're falling into it, he muttered. God help them, they're falling into every damn trap. Dr. Blackwood floated nearby, whispering to herself, half prayer, half equation. The fields are cascading. Once they destabilize local spacetime, the displacement spreads. They can't run from it. The more ships they move, the worse it gets. Nico swallowed. So what you're saying is it's working too well. Blackwood finally looked at him. I'm saying the Armada is being unmade faster than even I predicted. Nico felt the hairs rise on his arms. And what if it doesn't stop at them? Neither of them had an answer. Back aboard the Eternal Dominion, Krexnoth's scales had gone pale, almost white. He turned slowly, his voice lower, almost reverent. Status. Admiral, Erie whispered, we have lost 215 ships. Her scales flickered with dread, and the rate of vanishing is increasing. The warlord of 17 conquests, the breaker of empires, the terror of 3 sectors, felt his coils loosen with despair. The humans had done this. With their crude ships and their welding torches and their stubborn refusal to bow, they had rewritten war itself. Krexnoth spoke the words his people had never heard from him before. Order retreat. But the retreat was already too late. At the edges of the system, where the Armada sought hyperspace escape, the jump points shimmered, and ships began to vanish even faster. On Defiance, Torres looked up from his screen, eyes wide. Commander, confirmation, the Armada is trying to run. Sarah Chen's lips pressed into a thin line. She felt the eyes of every officer on her, waiting. Let them, she said quietly, let them see there is no way out. And far away, in the heart of the Armada, Admiral Krexnoth whispered the truth he had never imagined speaking aloud. They've trapped us. In that moment, as the great Armada dissolved piece by piece into silent nothingness, humanity, for the first time in galactic history, had not just defended itself. It had become something else entirely. A terror, a legend, a warning, and the Armada was still vanishing. The survivors of the Great Armada clustered like frightened animals around a dying fire. From 300 warships, only a third remained, less than 100. The formations were broken, geometry shredded. Where once there had been perfect lines and curves of power, now there were only ragged knots of ships, vessels drifting too close together, afraid to move, afraid to stay. On the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Krexnoth had ordered all non-essential systems shut down. The bridge glowed with a sickly green emergency light. Engines were cold. Weapons were quiet. He hoped silence would save them, though he no longer believed in hope. Every crewman whispered. Every officer shifted nervously. They were conquerors, but now they shook like prey. Report, Krexnoth hissed, voice low, scales dull with exhaustion. Sensor Adept Erie bent her trembling head. 28 more ships lost since last report, Admiral. Though the fields appear to be reacting to mass, anything larger than a fighter triggers them. Then we should scatter, one of the junior commanders shouted from across the bridge. Launch escape pods, thousands, tens of thousands, maybe some will survive. Coward, Vexathara's voice spat over the comm from her flagship. Her mandibles clacked in fury. We are warriors of the Armada. We do not flee in pods like vermin. Krexnoth coiled tighter. He wanted to lash out to strike down the trembling voices. But the truth weighed heavy. No formation, no shield, no weapon had stopped this invisible hunter. Every choice was death. Far away, in the shadows of the asteroid fields, humanity watched. On the UES Defiance, Commander Sarah Chen stood motionless, eyes fixed on the screen. She didn't allow herself a smile, not yet. Lieutenant Torres whispered in awe, "Ma'am, the Armada, it's broken. They're just sitting there, paralyzed." "They're learning," Chen said softly. "Too late." Dr. Blackwood patched in from Wayfarer, her hair wilder than ever, her voice sharp. "Commander, the mines are stabilizing into feedback loops. The more ships vanish, the stronger the fields get. They've locked the Armada in a cage of its own size." Nico Holt was at her side, hands greasy, prosthetic fingers twitching as he ran diagnostics. "So what you're saying, Doc, is they're not just stuck. They're drowning in their own mass," Blackwood finished grimly. Nico whistled low. "Hell of a way to go." On the Eternal Dominion, panic was building. Whole squads begged to fire their weapons blindly into the void. Others begged to scatter in every direction. Krexnoth's command chamber echoed with conflicting shouts, clatters, hisses. Then a voice cut through. "Admiral," Erie whispered, eyes wide, "incoming transmission, source human." Silence fell instantly. Every warrior froze. On screen, Krexnoth ordered, his throat dry. The wall lit up. Not Commander Chen this time. Another human, male, graying at the temples with weary eyes that had seen too many battles. His uniform was scuffed, his face drawn, yet his voice carried steady like iron wrapped in scars. "I am Captain Rodriguez of the UES Resilience," he said. Krexnoth's scales rippled in disbelief. "Lies, Resilience was destroyed. I watched it burn." Rodriguez almost smiled, but it was the smile of a man who had buried friends. "You watched a ship explode, Admiral, but not the real Resilience. We seeded you decoys. We let you chase shadows while the real fleet hid and watched." Krexnoth felt his coils tremble. The humiliation burned worse than fear. "You tricked us, sacrificed 47 ships, your own, to bait us into this nightmare." Rodriguez's tired eyes hardened. "We sacrificed 47 to save billions, to save our children, to teach you that humanity will not be broken." General Vexathara's image flashed on another panel. Her armored mandibles clattered in outrage. "Primitive ape, you cannot win with tricks forever. You cannot build victory on deception." Rodriguez's voice sharpened. "Then tell me, General, where is your fleet?" The silence that followed was worse than any laughter. On the Defiance, Sarah Chen stood in shadow, listening. She hadn't ordered Rodriguez to make this transmission, but she let him speak. Sometimes the best blow came from truth delivered plain. Torres leaned close. "Ma'am, he's revealing too much." "No," Chen whispered. "He's revealing just enough." On the alien bridge, Krexnoth's rage boiled with helplessness. "What do you want from us, human?" he snarled. Rodriguez leaned forward. "We want you to remember this day. We want you to crawl home with whatever is left of your fleet. We want you to tell the galaxy, humanity has teeth." "You dare threaten us?" Vexathara screeched. "Even now, surrounded, outnumbered." But as she spoke, her image flickered. Static rippled across her feed. Her mandibles froze mid-snarl. Then, before the eyes of every survivor, her flagship vanished. One moment she was there. The next, her chair sat empty and static. Krexnoth's scales turned white with shock. He had lost his rival, his ally, the only other commander who might have steadied this disaster. The bridge crew began to wail in their species' tongues. Terror poured out like smoke. Rodriguez's voice came quiet through the channel, cutting through the chaos. "You assumed that because we were weak in obvious ways, we were weak in all ways. You never considered the places we might be strong. That mistake just cost you the galaxy's greatest fleet." Krexnoth's tail lashed, smashing a console. Sparks flew. He wanted to scream, but the truth filled his throat like ash. His Armada, the most feared power in 17 systems, was dying. And there was nothing he could do to stop it. On the Defiance, Chen closed her eyes. She whispered not to her crew, but to herself. "It's working. God forgive us, it's working." Outside, in the endless dark, more ships began to vanish. The Great Armada was collapsing into silence. 6 months later, the galaxy gathered. The Galactic Council Chamber was a marvel of crystal architecture orbiting a neutral star. Its transparent walls curved high overhead, revealing the slow sweep of nebulae and stars like ancient eyes watching. Within the vast amphitheater, 43 species assembled, insectoid, crystalline, gaseous, humanoid, each seated in curved rows that encircled the central podium. For centuries, this chamber had been a place of balance tilted toward the strongest. Empires rose here by fear. Coalitions were forged by threats. Conquerors sat in the highest seats. But today, fear wore a new face. Today, humanity, a species barely known 10 years ago, stood at the center. Commander Sarah Chen walked into the light of the podium. She wore her blue uniform, plain, without medals. Her dark hair was neat, her face calm. Compared to the magnificent attire and natural grandeur of alien delegates, she looked small, ordinary, forgettable. And yet, silence fell the moment she stepped forward, because the smallest figure in the room had destroyed the great Armada. Even those who despised humans now stared with a mix of awe and dread. In the back row, the Zephyrian delegation sat in reduced honor. Their crystalline seats were dim, their banners lowered. Admiral Krexnoth was among them, no longer an admiral. He had been stripped of rank, his coils slack, his scales dull black. 18 ships had crawled home from 300. His people whispered his name as curse and warning. Beside him, Fleet Commander Zardoc, a crystalline being of sharp angles, stared with hollow eyes. He had seen too much. The council's voice boomed. Chancellor Emhai of the Centurion Republic, a towering tree being with leaves that shifted color with mood. Today, his leaves glowed a wary orange. The council recognizes Commander Sarah Chen of the human species, he intoned, voice like wind in old forests. Chen raised her chin, eyes sweeping across the chamber. Honored delegates, she began. Her voice was clear, simple, unadorned. 6 months ago, most of you had never heard of humanity. To you, we were nothing, a minor species, rapid breeders, primitive technology, barely worth a report. A ripple of murmurs spread. Some aliens shifted uncomfortably. They had indeed dismissed humans as pests. Chen continued. Then came the Battle of Saul. 300 Zephyrian warships entered our system. They expected to crush us. They expected another easy victory. Instead, they found something they had never faced before, and the great Armada vanished. Her words echoed like thunder. The silence afterward was thicker than stone. Chen touched a control on the podium. A star map appeared above her, glowing with hundreds of flickering bubbles, each one a quantum displacement field. These dots represent the missing ships, she said. Hundreds of vessels, thousands of warriors. They are not destroyed, they are displaced, alive, trapped in pockets of space-time outside our reach. Their families wait for them, their empires mourn them, but they are still out there. The chamber stirred. Some whispered with fear, others with fascination. An armored, crab-like delegate of the Corelaxians raised a claw. Why should we pity them? The Zephyrians showed no mercy when they enslaved our worlds. Why should we care if their warriors rot in endless prisons? Chen turned her eyes on him, steady. Because the same technology that trapped them could trap any of us. We created displacement as a shield, but it could just as easily become a sword. If war continues, if every species races to build bigger weapons, then sooner or later this fate will come for you, for all of us. The chamber chilled, they understood. General Korak of the vegan Warklins, his crystalline body glowing harsh red, leaned forward. You threaten us, human. You hold the key to the greatest weapon ever made. Why should we not destroy you now before you spread? A murmur of agreement followed. Fear often led to hatred. Chen's voice did not rise. It did not tremble. Because we've already proven we don't want to use it. We could have erased every ship in the Armada. We didn't. We let survivors return to carry a message. We could have turned displacement against other species. We didn't. Instead, we're offering to share what we've learned, to help you build defenses against it, to help you recover those who are lost. That stilled the murmurs. Sharing. No one in galactic history had ever offered such power freely. Ambassador Thevar of the Corelaxians clicked his claws. Why would you give away the secret to the most powerful weapon in existence? Chen looked around the chamber, meeting eyes of insect, crystal, metal, and flesh. Because the universe is bigger than any of us. Because while we waste time fighting each other, there are things out there older and stronger than anything we know. My scouts have seen them. She pressed another control. Holograms flickered. Ancient structures appeared, rings larger than stars, machines buried in nebulae, ruins the size of solar systems. Gasps, rattles, hisses filled the chamber. Delegates recoiled. The images were undeniable. Chen's voice carried quiet weight. These are not ours, these are not yours. They were built by civilizations far beyond us. Maybe they're gone, maybe they're still watching. But if they return, our quarrels won't matter. Our conquests, our pride, our fleets, none of it will matter. We will either stand together or we will fall apart. The council shook with debate. Some shouted in anger, some whispered in awe, some trembled with fear. Finally, Fleet Commander Zardoc of the Zephyrians spoke, his voice like breaking glass, heavy with defeat. If we agree to this, cooperation, will humanity help us retrieve our displaced crews? Yes, Chen said without hesitation. All of them, Zephyrian, Coralaxian, any species who has lost ships, we will not leave them behind if there is any chance to bring them home. The chamber erupted again, but this time it was not only fear, there was something else, a spark of possibility. Chancellor Emhai rose, his leaves shifting to green. Then let it be recorded. The Council will consider a new accord, one of cooperation, not conquest. And for the first time in the history of the galaxy, the idea of peace was spoken not as weakness, but as survival. In the shadows of the council chamber, Admiral Krexnoth listened, broken. His scales were black, his coils limp. He remembered the screams of ships vanishing. He remembered Chen's face, calm and unyielding. And in his heart he knew the galaxy had changed forever. The age of conquest was ending. And humanity, the species once dismissed as primitive, had written the first words of a new age. But in the dark between stars, where quantum echoes lingered, the missing ships still waited. And no one yet knew what they might become. The ink of space was quiet, but everyone in the galaxy could feel the weight of what had happened. The great Armada was gone, not defeated in fire and wreckage, but erased into silence. The survivors, a handful of battered Zephyrian ships, limped home like beaten dogs, their proud banners trailing tatters. Empires that once feared the Armada now whispered with dark joy at their humiliation. Old enemies raised cups in secret toasts, but more than celebration there was unease. If the most powerful fleet in the galaxy could vanish without a trace, what did that mean for everyone else? On Earth, Commander Sarah Chen stood at the edge of the Pacific Spire, a tower built to honor the fleet that had not returned. Wind tugged her short black hair as she gazed at a monument carved with 47 names, the captains and ships who had volunteered for sacrifice. Rodriguez's name was there. Resilience was not coming home. Chen placed her hand on the cold metal and whispered, "You won." Behind her, Dr. Alina Blackwood approached, her eyes red from nights without sleep. "We stabilized the fields," she said quietly. "The mines won't spread any further, but the displaced ships, they're still out there. We don't know how to bring them back. Maybe we never will." Chen didn't look away from the names. Maybe they're better off never returning. Blackwood's voice was sharp. "That's not for us to decide. They're alive, Sarah. We owe them more than silence." Chen closed her eyes. She could still hear the alien general's laughter before the battle, mocking humanity. She could still hear Rodriguez's last steady words. She nodded once. "Then we'll find a way." Far away on the Zephyrian homeworld, Admiral Krexnoth knelt in disgrace before the High Command. His coils lay slack, his scales dull and lifeless. "You have shamed us," intoned the Chancellor. 17 systems bow to us, yet you let apes unmake our Armada. You are no longer Admiral, you are nothing. Krexnoth bowed his head, not in obedience, but in exhaustion. He had no fight left. But as they stripped him of rank, a strange thought coiled in his mind like a shadow. What if the humans are right? What if brute force is no longer enough? The Galactic Council signed the Accord of Cooperation. 38 species pledged to share research, to resolve disputes through negotiation, and to defend one another against threats beyond known space. It was fragile, imperfect, full of mistrust, but it was a beginning. For the first time in history, empires that had once conquered and enslaved sat at the same table and spoke of peace. And at the center of it all was humanity. Not the strongest, not the oldest, not the most advanced, but the most dangerous in the one way that mattered. They thought differently. Nico Holt stood on the Wayfarer's hull, tethered against the pull of vacuum, gazing into the stars. His prosthetic hand clicked softly as he adjusted a tool. He wasn't fixing anything this time. He was simply watching. A faint chittering came through his wristband. A coded message from his Coralaxian friend, Crixa. "Little brother," the message said, "word spreads. Empires whisper your name in fear. They say humanity bent the stars, but fear is not the same as peace. Be ready." Nico chuckled softly, though his chest felt tight. "Always am," he whispered back. Weeks later, deep in the dark where no suns reached, strange things began to stir. Inside the displacement fields, time twisted. Seconds stretched into centuries. Centuries collapsed into moments. The crews of the vanished Armada screamed, prayed, wept, and were heard by no one. But the ships did not remain still. Their reactors pulsed with alien power. Their crews clung to sanity as reality bent around them. And something answered. From the edge of those impossible spaces, shapes older than stars leaned close, curious at the new arrivals. The Armada had vanished, yes, but it had not vanished alone. On Earth, Sarah Chen stood once more in the command chamber of the Defiance, preparing for her next mission. She knew the war was not over. She knew that even with peace accords signed, old rivalries would fester. But for now, there was breathing room. She looked at the stars on the main screen and whispered, "They laughed when we warned them. They thought we were weak. Now they know better." Tors, standing at her side, asked quietly, "And if they come again?" Chen's eyes hardened. "Then the galaxy will remember. Humanity rewrote war once, will do it again." The engines of the Defiance hummed to life, carrying humanity's banner into the unknown. And in the distance, where echoes lingered, the vanished Armada began to stir in ways no one yet understood. Epilogue. The age of conquest was over. The age of cooperation had begun. But in the deep silence between dimensions, something ancient waited. And when it came, the galaxy would discover whether humanity's teeth were sharp enough not just to bite, but to survive the jaws of gods.